In a small town nestled on the outskirts of Chicago, life moved at its own unhurried pace. The streets were lined with modest homes and local businesses that had been around for decades. Among these was a cozy diner named Maggie's Place, a favorite spot for locals looking to enjoy hearty meals and friendly service. It was here, in this unassuming eatery, that Emily Carter spent most of her days. Emily was a hardworking woman in her late 20s, with a heart as warm as the coffee she served. She had shoulder-length brown hair that was often tied back into a loose ponytail, and her bright green eyes always seemed to carry a hint of kindness. Despite the challenges life had thrown her way, Emily never let bitterness take root. Instead, she faced each day with determination and grit, knowing that her efforts were not just for herself but also for her younger sister Lily, who depended on her. Lily was only 16 when their parents passed away unexpectedly in a car accident 3 years earlier. Overnight, Emily became both a guardian and provider. Balancing 2 jobs, one at Maggie's Place during the day and another cleaning offices at night, was exhausting, but Emily refused to give up. She wanted nothing more than to ensure Lily had a stable future, even if it meant sacrificing her own dreams along the way. On one particularly busy afternoon, Emily found herself weaving between tables, balancing trays laden with plates of burgers, fries, and milkshakes. The diner buzzed with chatter from customers enjoying lunch, but something caught her attention near the corner booth by the window. A young boy sat there alone, his wheelchair tucked neatly under the table. His hands trembled slightly as he tried to lift a fork to his mouth, but no matter how hard he concentrated, the food kept slipping off before reaching his lips. Emily paused mid-step, setting down her tray on an empty table nearby. There was something about the boy's quiet struggle that tugged at her heartstrings. He looked to be around 10 or 11, years old, with soft brown hair and wide, expressive eyes that held a mixture of frustration and embarrassment. Without hesitation, Emily approached him, her voice gentle yet firm. "Hi there," she said, offering him a reassuring smile. "Would you like some help with that?" The boy hesitated for a moment, perhaps unsure whether accepting help would make him seem weak. But then he nodded slowly, his shoulders relaxing as if a weight had been lifted. Emily pulled out a chair opposite him and sat down, taking care not to draw too much attention to their interaction. With practiced ease, she picked up the fork and began feeding him bite by bite, making sure to keep things lighthearted. "You know," she teased playfully after he finished chewing a piece of chicken, "this is probably the first time I've served someone without them having to ask twice." The boy chuckled softly, his earlier tension melting away. They exchanged a few words between bites, though he remained reserved, clearly unused to strangers being so kind. When the meal was over, Emily handed him a napkin and gave him another warm smile. "There you go," she said, "all done." Unbeknownst to either of them, they were being watched intently from across the room. Hidden behind a newspaper sat Richard Bennett, a man whose name carried immense weight in the business world. To those who knew him professionally, Richard was a self-made billionaire with a reputation for ruthlessness in negotiations and unparalleled success in real estate ventures. But today, he wasn't focused on deals or profits. Instead, his sharp blue eyes were fixed on the scene unfolding before him. Richard's son, Lucas, suffered from cerebral palsy, a condition that affected his motor skills and made everyday tasks like eating or dressing himself incredibly difficult. Over the years, Richard had hired numerous caretakers to assist Lucas, hoping to provide him with the best possible care. Yet none of them had ever shown the level of genuine compassion Emily displayed in those brief moments. Most treated Lucas with detached professionalism, completing their duties efficiently but rarely forming any real connection with him. Watching Emily now, however, Richard felt something stir inside him, a mix of admiration and guilt. He couldn't recall the last time he'd seen anyone treat Lucas with such patience and warmth. Here was a complete stranger going out of her way to help his son, expecting nothing in return. It made Richard question whether he'd been doing enough, not just financially, but emotionally, as a father. He prided himself on providing Lucas with everything money could buy: top-notch medical care, state-of-the-art equipment, private tutors. But none of those things could replace what Emily offered: human connection. As Emily returned to her duties, Richard lowered the newspaper and studied her closely. She moved gracefully among the tables, chatting amiably with customers and ensuring everyone felt welcome. There was an authenticity to her demeanor that stood out, a sincerity that couldn't be faked. Richard wondered what drove someone like her, someone who clearly worked tirelessly, to extend such kindness to a boy she didn't even know. Later that evening, as Richard drove home in his sleek black sedan, his mind kept drifting back to the diner. Images of Emily feeding Lucas replayed in his head, accompanied by feelings of unease and curiosity. What kind of person willingly stepped into another's struggles without hesitation? And why did witnessing her actions leave him feeling so conflicted? When he arrived at his sprawling mansion, an imposing structure surrounded by manicured lawns and towering oak trees, Richard headed straight for his study. Pouring himself a glass of whiskey, he settled into a leather armchair and stared out the window at the darkening sky. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to reflect honestly on his role as a father. Lucas was the center of Richard's world, the one thing that truly mattered to him. Yet despite his love for his son, Richard often struggled to connect with him on an emotional level. Work consumed most of his time, leaving little room for personal interactions. He justified this absence by telling himself that providing financial security was just as important as being present. But deep down, he knew it wasn't the same. Seeing Emily's effortless bond with Lucas made him realize how much he had been missing. That night, sleep eluded Richard. Thoughts of Emily swirled in his mind, mingling with memories of Lucas's laughter and tears. By morning, he had made up his mind. He needed to learn more about the waitress who had unknowingly changed his perspective in just a single afternoon. Little did he know, this decision would set into motion a chain of events that would alter not only his life but also Emily's, and ultimately bring them closer together in ways neither could have anticipated. For now, though, Richard simply resolved to return to Maggie's place the following day, determined to observe Emily once more. Perhaps, he thought, she held the key to unlocking a deeper relationship with his son, a relationship built not on wealth or privilege, but on simple acts of kindness and understanding. The next morning, Richard woke up earlier than usual. He dressed casually, choosing a pair of dark jeans and a simple sweater instead of his usual tailored suits. For once, he didn't want to stand out or draw attention to himself. His goal was clear: to observe Emily again without making her feel uncomfortable. As he drove to Maggie's place, his thoughts drifted back to the previous day. The image of Emily feeding Lucas stayed etched in his mind, replaying like a scene from a movie he couldn't turn off. When Richard arrived at the diner, it was just past noon, the busiest time of day. The place buzzed with activity as customers chatted over plates of pancakes and steaming cups of coffee. Emily was already hard at work, weaving through tables with practiced ease. Her apron was tied snugly around her waist, and a notepad rested in her hand as she jotted down orders with a quick smile for each customer. Richard slid into a booth near the back, positioning himself so he could watch her without being too obvious. He ordered a cup of black coffee and a slice of apple pie, though he barely touched either. Instead, his focus remained on Emily. She moved effortlessly between tasks, refilling drinks, clearing plates, and exchanging friendly banter with patrons. What struck Richard most was how natural she seemed in her role. There was no hint of frustration or impatience, even when dealing with demanding customers or balancing multiple requests at once. It was as if she thrived under pressure, finding joy in the chaos. As the afternoon wore on, Richard noticed something else about Emily that intrigued him. She didn't treat people differently based on their appearance or demeanor. Whether serving an elderly couple sharing a milkshake or a group of rowdy teenagers laughing loudly, Emily gave everyone the same level of care and attention. This consistency fascinated Richard. In his world, people often acted one way in public and another behind closed doors. But Emily appeared genuine. Her kindness wasn't performative. It came from within. Eventually, Lucas entered the diner again, this time accompanied by a caregiver Richard had hired temporarily. The boy scanned the room until his eyes landed on Emily, lighting up instantly. Without hesitation, he wheeled himself toward her station, where she greeted him warmly. "Hey, Lucas," she said, leaning down slightly to meet his gaze. "I saved your favorite spot." She gestured to the corner booth by the window, the same one he'd occupied the day before. Richard watched silently as Emily helped Lucas settle in and handed him a menu. Though Lucas didn't speak much, his body language spoke volumes. He relaxed visibly in Emily's presence, clearly comfortable around her. After taking his order, Emily returned moments later with a plate of grilled cheese and tomato soup. Once again, she offered to help him eat, and once again, Lucas accepted with a shy nod. This time, however, Richard decided to intervene. As Emily finished feeding Lucas, Richard approached the table cautiously. Clearing his throat to get her attention, he extended his hand. "Hi," he began, his voice calm but tinged with nervousness. "My name is Richard Bennett. I'm Lucas's father." Emily froze, her expression shifting from surprise to uncertainty. She wiped her hands on her apron before shaking his hand briefly. "Oh, hi," she replied, her tone polite but guarded. "Is everything okay?" "Yes, everything's fine," Richard assured her quickly. "Actually, I wanted to thank you for what you did yesterday, and today too. You've been incredibly kind to my son." Emily blinked, caught off guard by the unexpected gratitude. "It's no big deal," she said softly, glancing at Lucas, who was watching the exchange curiously. "I just thought he might need a little help, that's all." To Emily, her actions were ordinary, a reflex born out of compassion. But to Richard, they represented something extraordinary. He nodded slowly, his admiration evident. "Well, it means a lot to me, and to him, more than you realize." Before Emily could respond, Richard hesitated, debating whether to say more. He didn't want to overwhelm her or make her feel uncomfortable, but curiosity got the better of him. "Listen," he continued, lowering his voice slightly. "Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? About your background, I mean, if you're not busy right now." Emily raised an eyebrow, unsure what to make of the request. Still, she nodded. "Sure, I guess. But can we talk after my shift? I don't want to leave my coworkers hanging." "Of course," Richard agreed immediately. "Take your time, I'll wait." For the rest of her shift, Emily found herself distracted, replaying the brief conversation in her head. Who exactly was this man, and why did he seem so interested in her? She knew he was wealthy. His expensive car parked outside was a dead giveaway. But beyond that, she had no idea what motivated him. Was he testing her somehow? Or was he simply grateful for her kindness toward his son? When her shift finally ended, Emily met Richard outside the diner. He stood leaning against his car, looking every bit the successful businessman despite his casual attire. As she approached, he straightened up and offered her a small smile. "Thanks for meeting me," he said. "I know you must be tired after such a long day." "It's okay," Emily replied, shrugging. "What did you want to ask me?" Richard gestured for her to sit on a nearby bench, and reluctantly she obliged. "First, let me start by saying I appreciate what you've done for Lucas." He began. "Most people wouldn't go out of their way to help someone they don't know, so I'm curious, what drives you? Why are you so willing to lend a hand?" Emily hesitated, unsure how to answer. She wasn't used to being put on the spot like this, especially by someone like Richard. Finally, she sighed and looked down at her hands. "I guess I've been through some tough times myself," she admitted quietly. "When my parents passed away, I had to step up and take care of my little sister. We didn't have much, and sometimes it felt like the whole world was against us. But there were always people who helped us along the way. Neighbors, teachers, even strangers. They didn't have to do anything, but they did. And because of them, we made it through." She paused, gathering her thoughts before continuing. "So now, whenever I see someone struggling, I try to pay it forward. It's not about being a hero or anything, it's just doing what I can." Richard listened intently, his respect for Emily growing with every word. Her humility and selflessness resonated deeply with him. Here was someone who understood hardship firsthand yet chose to respond with kindness rather than bitterness. It was a rare quality, one he hadn't encountered often in his privileged life. "I see," Richard said after a moment. "That's admirable, truly." He hesitated, then added, "Tell me about your situation now. Are you still working 2 jobs? Emily nodded, surprised by his interest. "Yeah, I work here during the day and clean offices at night. It's tiring, but it pays the bills. My sister's almost done with high school, so hopefully things will get easier soon." Richard frowned, processing this information. He hadn't expected her responsibilities to be quite so overwhelming. "And what about you?" he asked gently. "Do you ever think about pursuing something else? Something for yourself?" Emily laughed softly, though there was a hint of sadness in her voice. "Honestly, I haven't had time to think about that. Right now, my priority is making sure my sister has everything she needs. Once she's settled, maybe I'll figure out what comes next." Her answer confirmed what Richard had suspected. Emily was sacrificing her own dreams to support her family. While admirable, it also struck him as unfair. Someone with her character and determination deserved better opportunities. Opportunities he could provide. "Well," Richard said, standing up and extending his hand once more. "Thank you for sharing that with me. You've given me a lot to think about." Emily shook his hand, still puzzled by the encounter. "You're welcome, I guess, but why are you asking all these questions?" Richard smiled faintly. "Let's just say I'm considering ways to show my appreciation for everything you've done for Lucas and for being the person you are. I'll be in touch soon, Emily. Until then, take care of yourself." With that, he climbed into his car and drove away, leaving Emily sitting on the bench wondering what exactly had just happened. Little did she know, Richard's wheels were already turning, formulating a plan that would change her life forever. Over the next few days, Richard couldn't stop thinking about Emily. Her story had resonated with him on a personal level, reminding him of the importance of human connection and empathy. He admired her resilience and dedication, qualities he wished he possessed more of himself. Determined to repay her kindness, Richard began researching ways to alleviate some of her burdens. He started by contacting the diner's manager, posing as a curious patron. "I've noticed one of your waitresses, Emily Carter, is particularly attentive," he said casually. "Does she work here full-time?" The manager chuckled. "Oh, Emily? Yeah, she's one of our best. Works long hours. Always goes above and beyond for the customers. Honestly, I don't know how she does it. Between shifts here and her nighttime job, she's practically running herself ragged." Richard nodded thoughtfully. "I see. Does she have any family obligations? Any reason she might need extra support?" The manager hesitated, unsure how much to share. "Well, yeah. She's raising her younger sister on her own since their parents passed away. Pretty admirable, if you ask me." That confirmed everything Richard needed to know. Armed with this information, he devised a plan, one that would not only benefit Emily but also potentially improve Lucas's quality of life. Emily's first day as Lucas's full-time caregiver began with a mix of excitement and nerves. She arrived at the Bennett mansion early in the morning, dressed in comfortable clothes and carrying a small bag filled with essentials. The house was even more impressive up close than she had imagined. Spacious rooms adorned with elegant furniture, large windows that let in natural light, and a backyard that stretched endlessly. Despite its grandeur, the place felt oddly empty, as if it lacked the warmth of a true home. Richard greeted her at the door, his usual confident demeanor softened by a hint of nervousness. "Good morning, Emily," he said, offering her a warm smile. "I'm glad you're here. Let me show you around." As they walked through the house, Richard explained the daily routine he had established for Lucas. There were specific times for meals, therapy sessions, and activities designed to stimulate his cognitive and physical development. He also introduced her to the team of specialists who occasionally visited the house: a physical therapist, a speech pathologist, and a nutritionist, all dedicated to helping Lucas thrive. Though the schedule seemed meticulous, Richard assured Emily that flexibility was key. Lucas responds best when things feel natural and fun, he explained. Don't worry too much about sticking to the plan perfectly. Just focus on keeping him engaged and happy. Emily nodded, taking mental notes as they continued their tour. When they reached Lucas's room, she paused, her heart swelling with emotion. The space was thoughtfully decorated with colorful posters, shelves lined with books and toys, and a cozy seating area near the window. It was clear that Richard had put effort into creating an environment where his son could feel safe and inspired. Lucas was already awake, sitting in his wheelchair and gazing out the window. When he saw Emily, his face lit up with recognition and he waved enthusiastically. "Hey, Lucas," she said, kneeling down to meet his eye level. "Ready for a new adventure?" Over the next few weeks, Emily settled into her role with remarkable ease. Her natural ability to connect with Lucas became evident almost immediately. Unlike previous caregivers who often followed rigid routines or treated him with clinical detachment, Emily approached every task with creativity and enthusiasm. She turned mealtime into a game, encouraging Lucas to use adaptive utensils while laughing at silly jokes. During therapy sessions, she cheered him on like a proud coach, celebrating even the smallest victories. One afternoon, while helping Lucas paint pictures using special brushes attached to his hands, Emily noticed something unexpected: Richard watching from the doorway. He stood quietly, observing the scene with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. When their eyes met, he smiled faintly and stepped inside. "This is incredible," he said, gesturing to the vibrant artwork scattered across the table. "I've never seen him so focused or so happy." Emily shrugged modestly. "He loves colors. I figured painting might be a good way for him to express himself." Richard nodded, clearly impressed. "You have a gift, Emily. A real talent for understanding what makes people tick." His words caught her off guard, but she brushed them aside. "I'm just doing my job," she replied softly. "And besides, Lucas makes it easy. He's such a sweetheart." Though Emily dismissed the compliment, Richard couldn't shake the admiration he felt for her. Watching her interact with Lucas reminded him of the kind of father he wished he could be: patient, present, and unafraid to embrace imperfection. Over time, he found himself seeking her advice, not only about Lucas, but also about life in general. Their conversations grew longer and more personal, revealing layers of vulnerability neither had anticipated. One evening, after Lucas had gone to bed, Richard invited Emily to join him in the living room for coffee. The atmosphere was relaxed, the kind of quiet calm that comes after a long day of meaningful work. As they sat facing each other, Richard hesitated before speaking. "I've been thinking a lot lately," he began, his tone unusually reflective, "about how much you've changed things for Lucas and for me. Before you came along, I thought I was doing everything right, providing for him, hiring experts, making sure he had access to the best resources. But none of that mattered without connection. And now, seeing how you treat him, how you bring out the best in him, it's made me realize how much I've been missing." Emily listened intently, sensing the weight behind his words. "You're a good dad, Richard," she said gently. "No one expects you to be perfect. You love Lucas, and that's what matters most." Richard sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "Love isn't always enough, though, is it? Sometimes it's not about what we give materially. It's about showing up emotionally, being there even when it's hard." The honesty in his voice touched Emily deeply. She understood the struggles of balancing responsibilities and relationships all too well. "It's okay to admit you're still learning," she said. "We all are. What matters is that you're trying, and trust me, Lucas knows how much you care." Their conversation lingered in the air long after the coffee cups were empty. For the first time, Richard allowed himself to open up about his fears and regrets, not just as a father, but as a person. He spoke of the sacrifices he'd made in pursuit of success, the relationships he'd neglected, and the loneliness that sometimes accompanied wealth. In return, Emily shared stories of her own challenges, from losing her parents to raising Lily on her own. What started as a professional arrangement gradually evolved into a friendship built on mutual respect and trust. They supported each other in ways neither had expected, finding comfort in shared experiences and honest dialogue. Yet despite their growing closeness, Emily remained steadfast in her commitment to Lucas, ensuring that her primary focus remained on his well-being. As weeks turned into months, Emily introduced Lucas to new activities tailored to his abilities. She enrolled him in a local art therapy program, where he thrived under the guidance of compassionate instructors. On weekends, she took him to parks and museums, exposing him to sights and sounds that sparked curiosity and joy. Under her care, Lucas blossomed emotionally and mentally, surpassing milestones that once seemed unreachable. Richard marveled at the transformation, grateful for Emily's influence not only on his son, but also on himself. He began spending more time at home, actively participating in Lucas's activities instead of delegating them to others. Inspired by Emily's example, he learned to slow down and appreciate the little moments. The sound of Lucas's laughter, the brush of his fingers against his father's hand, the quiet contentment of simply being together. One Saturday afternoon, as they prepared for an outing to the zoo, Richard pulled Emily aside. "I owe you more than just a paycheck," he said earnestly. "You've given us so much more than I ever hoped for. Is there anything I can do to repay you?" Emily shook her head, smiling warmly. "You don't owe me anything, Richard. Seeing Lucas happy is reward enough." But Richard wasn't satisfied. He knew her sacrifices extended far beyond her duties as a caregiver. She deserved recognition and support for everything she had done. That night, unable to sleep, he devised a plan that would change Emily's life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The following week, Richard arranged a meeting with his financial advisor to discuss setting up a trust fund in Emily's name. It wasn't charity. It was gratitude, an acknowledgement of her invaluable contributions to his family. By the time the documents were finalized, Richard felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. Finally, he was taking action to ensure that someone who had given so much would receive something in return. When the day came to present the trust fund to Emily, Richard chose a quiet moment after Lucas had fallen asleep. He called her into his study, handing her a folder containing the details. "Open it," he urged, his voice steady but tinged with anticipation. Emily hesitated, unsure what to expect. As she flipped through the pages, her eyes widened in disbelief. Tears welled up as she looked at Richard, struggling to find words. I don't know what to say," she stammered. "This is too much." "It's not too much," Richard insisted firmly. "You've earned every penny, Emily. More. Importantly, this will give you the freedom to focus on what truly matters: your family, your dreams, and Lucas." Despite her initial reluctance, Emily eventually accepted the gift, overwhelmed by its generosity. With newfound stability, she enrolled in online courses to pursue her dream of becoming a certified therapist, specializing in children with disabilities. Meanwhile, Richard continued to prioritize his relationship with Lucas, inspired by Emily's unwavering dedication. Years later, as Lucas graduated from a special needs program, Emily stood proudly beside him, and Richard. Cameras flashed. Applause filled the room and tears streamed down their faces as they celebrated a journey that had begun with a simple act of kindness in a quiet diner. Through challenges and triumphs, they had formed an unconventional yet loving family unit, bound together by trust, gratitude, and mutual respect. For Emily, the once struggling waitress, life had taken a turn she never could have imagined, all because she chose to help a stranger in need. And for Richard, the reclusive billionaire, rediscovering the value of human connection had transformed not only his son's life, but also his own. Together, they proved that sometimes, the smallest, gestures can lead to the greatest changes. As the months passed, Emily's presence in the Bennett household became more than just a professional arrangement. It transformed into a foundation of trust and support. Her bond with Lucas grew stronger each day, built on patience, laughter, and shared experiences. She introduced him to activities that sparked his curiosity and helped him discover new ways to express himself. From art therapy sessions to outdoor adventures, every moment was filled with purpose and joy. Richard watched these developments with a mix of awe and gratitude. He had always loved his son deeply, but before Emily arrived, he struggled to connect with Lucas on an emotional level. Work had consumed most of his time, leaving little room for personal interactions. Now, inspired by Emily's example, Richard made a conscious effort to change. He began joining Lucas and Emily during their daily routines, helping with meals, playing games, and even accompanying them on outings. These small moments brought him closer to his son than any expensive gift ever could. One sunny afternoon, the three of them visited a local park. Lucas sat in his wheelchair watching birds flit between trees while Emily pushed him along the path. Richard walked beside them, pointing out different flowers and plants. "Look at this one," he said, crouching down to show Lucas a cluster of daisies. "Do you see how white they are? Like snow." Lucas smiled, reaching out to touch one of the petals. Though he couldn't speak clearly, his eyes conveyed pure delight. Emily captured the moment with her phone, snapping a photo that would later become one of Richard's most cherished memories. It wasn't just the image itself that mattered. It was what it represented. A family coming together, however unconventional, to create something beautiful. Back at home, Emily continued to find innovative ways to engage Lucas. She bought a keyboard and taught him how to press keys using adaptive tools, turning music into a form of communication. At first, the notes were random and disjointed, but over time, Lucas learned to play simple melodies. One evening, as he tapped out "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star," Richard stood in the doorway, tears streaming down his face. "I can't believe it," he whispered to Emily after Lucas finished. "He's amazing. You're amazing." Emily shrugged modestly, though pride flickered in her eyes. "It's all him," she said. "I just gave him the tools. He's the one doing the work." But Richard knew better. Without Emily's encouragement and creativity, none of this would have been possible. She didn't just care for Lucas, she believed in him, and that belief was contagious, spreading to everyone around her, including Richard. Their friendship deepened as they navigated the challenges and triumphs of raising Lucas together. They spent hours discussing strategies to improve his quality of life, brainstorming ideas for new activities, and celebrating milestones no matter how small. But their conversations weren't limited to Lucas. Over time, they began sharing pieces of their own lives, their hopes, fears, and dreams. For Emily, opening up to someone like Richard felt strange at first. He came from a world so different from hers, where wealth and privilege seemed to solve every problem. Yet the more they talked, the more she realized he was just as human as anyone else. Beneath his polished exterior lay insecurities and regrets, struggles he rarely admitted to others. His vulnerability drew her in, creating a connection neither had anticipated. One evening, after putting Lucas to bed, Emily joined Richard in the kitchen. He was pouring himself a cup of tea when she entered, offering her a warm smile. "Want some?" he asked, holding up the kettle. "Sure," she replied, taking a seat at the counter. As he prepared her drink, she noticed the tired lines etched into his face. Running a billion-dollar empire while raising a child with special needs was no easy feat, and lately, it seemed to be taking its toll. "You've been working late a lot recently," she observed. "Is everything okay?" Richard sighed, setting the teacup in front of her. "Business has been hectic. There's always another deal to close, another meeting to attend. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever get it right, balancing work and family. Emily nodded thoughtfully. "It's tough," she agreed. "But you're doing better than you think. Look at how much time you spend with Lucas now. That says a lot." Her words reassured him, but they also sparked a deeper conversation. For the next hour, they talked openly about their respective struggles, hers with juggling responsibilities, and his with finding meaning beyond material success. By the end of the night, both felt lighter, as if unloading their burdens had created space for something new. Despite their growing closeness, Emily remained focused on her role as Lucas's caregiver. She refused to let anything distract her from her primary mission, ensuring his happiness and well-being. This dedication only strengthened Richard's admiration for her. He admired not just her strength and resilience, but also her humility. She never sought recognition or reward for her efforts, yet her impact was undeniable. One day, as they prepared for an upcoming therapy session, Richard surprised Emily with an unexpected gesture. "I've been thinking," he said, handing her a brochure. "There's a conference next month for caregivers and therapists working with children who have disabilities. I'd like you to attend." Emily stared at the pamphlet, stunned. "Are you serious? That sounds incredible, but isn't it expensive?" "Money isn't an issue," Richard replied firmly. "This is an opportunity for you to learn, grow, and meet others in your field. You deserve it, Emily." Though hesitant at first, Emily eventually accepted the offer, recognizing it as a chance to expand her knowledge and skills. The conference proved to be eye-opening, introducing her to cutting-edge techniques and inspiring stories from professionals around the country. When she returned home, she shared everything she'd learned with Richard and Lucas, implementing new strategies that further enriched their lives. As the months turned into a year, Emily's influence extended beyond Lucas and Richard. She inspired those around her to embrace compassion and empathy, qualities often overlooked in today's fast-paced world. Neighbors who once barely acknowledged the Bennetts began stopping by to chat, drawn by the warmth radiating from the house. Even the specialists who worked with Lucas noticed a shift in the atmosphere, commenting on how much happier and more engaged everyone seemed. Yet despite the positive changes, Emily remained grounded, refusing to let praise inflate her ego. To her, the real reward lay in seeing Lucas thrive. Every smile, every milestone, every moment of progress reaffirmed her decision to accept Richard's offer all those months ago. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves swirled in the wind, Richard approached Emily with a thoughtful expression. "I've been reflecting on everything that's happened since you joined us," he said, "and I realized something important." "What's that?" Emily asked, curious. "You've changed our lives, not just Lucas's, but mine too. Before you came along, I was lost. I thought providing financially was enough, but you showed me otherwise. You reminded me what truly matters: connection, kindness, and love." His words caught her off guard, bringing tears to her eyes. "I didn't do anything extraordinary," she insisted. "I just tried to help." "That's exactly why it's extraordinary," Richard countered. "You didn't have to do any of this, you chose to. And because of that choice, we're a family now. In every way that counts." The sentiment lingered between them, solidifying a bond that went beyond employer and employee. They were partners in raising Lucas, allies in navigating life's challenges, and friends who supported each other through thick and thin. As winter approached, Emily enrolled in additional courses to further her education, determined to build a career that combined her passion for helping others with her newfound expertise. With Richard's encouragement, she set ambitious goals, confident that she finally had the resources and stability to pursue them. Meanwhile, Richard continued to prioritize his relationship with Lucas, cherishing the moments they shared. Whether reading bedtime stories or cheering him on during therapy sessions, he embraced his role as a father with renewed enthusiasm. Watching him grow into this version of himself filled Emily with pride. She had come to admire Richard not just as a man of wealth and power, but as a man of heart and integrity. Together they proved that kindness and perseverance could overcome even the greatest obstacles. Their journey, from strangers brought together by circumstance to a makeshift family bound by love, was a testament to the transformative power of human connection. And though neither could predict what the future held, one thing was certain: They would face it together, united by the bonds they had forged and the lives they had touched along the way. As the seasons changed, so did the rhythm of life within the Bennett household. The once sterile mansion now felt alive with laughter, music, and the sound of Lucas's occasional giggles echoing through the halls. Emily had become more than just a caregiver. She was the heart of the home, weaving warmth and joy into every corner. Her presence transformed not only Lucas's life, but also Richard's outlook on what it meant to truly live. One chilly winter evening, as snow blanketed the ground outside, Emily sat cross-legged on the living room floor with Lucas beside her. They were surrounded by colorful craft supplies, glitter, glue, paper, and markers, as they worked on creating handmade cards for friends and family. Emily had suggested the project as a way to teach Lucas about expressing gratitude, and he eagerly embraced the idea. With her guidance, he carefully placed stickers and traced shapes onto the paper, his face lighting up with pride at each completed card. Richard entered the room quietly, watching from the doorway as Emily praised Lucas's efforts. "Look at this one," she exclaimed, holding up a card adorned with sparkly stars. "This is going to make someone very happy." Lucas grinned, clapping his hands in excitement. Seeing his reaction, Richard stepped closer, kneeling down to join them. "Mind if I help?" he asked, his tone playful. "Of course not," Emily replied with a smile. "We could use another pair of hands." Together, the three of them spent the next hour crafting cards, laughing over glitter spills and debating which designs looked best. It was a simple activity, yet it carried profound meaning. For Richard, moments like these reminded him of how far they had come as a family. Once distant and unsure of himself as a father, he now found joy in the smallest interactions with his son, and much of that change was thanks to Emily's influence. After finishing the cards, Richard excused himself briefly to prepare hot chocolate for everyone. When he returned, carrying mugs topped with whipped cream and marshmallows, he noticed Emily gazing thoughtfully at the fireplace. The flickering flames cast soft shadows across her face, highlighting the quiet determination that always seemed to define her. "You've been working hard lately," Richard said, handing her a mug. "Between caring for Lucas and taking your courses, you must be exhausted." Emily accepted the drink with a grateful nod. "It's a lot to balance, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. I feel like I'm finally moving toward something meaningful, a career where I can make a difference." Her words resonated deeply with Richard. He admired her drive and ambition, qualities he rarely saw in others. Most people in his circle were content to coast on privilege or rely on shortcuts, but Emily approached life with grit and purpose. She inspired him to reflect on his own choices and consider how he could leave a lasting legacy beyond his business empire. "I've been thinking," Richard began hesitantly, stirring his hot chocolate, "about your future and mine. You've given us so much, Emily, not just to Lucas but to me too. I want to do something to show my appreciation." Emily raised an eyebrow, curious but wary. "You already pay me well, Richard, more than I ever expected." "It's not about money," he insisted. "I mean, I want to invest in your dreams. Whatever you need, whether it's funding for school, resources for your projects, or connections to help you grow. I want to be part of making that happen." His offer caught her off guard. Though they had grown close over the past year, she hadn't anticipated such generosity. "That's incredibly kind," she said softly, "but I don't want you to feel obligated. I'm doing fine on my own." "It's not obligation," Richard replied firmly. "It's gratitude. You've reminded me what it means to care for others selflessly. If I can support you in achieving your goals, then I'll consider it one of the best decisions I've ever made." Though hesitant, Emily eventually agreed to let Richard assist her in pursuing her education and professional aspirations. Over the following months, he helped cover tuition costs for advanced courses, introduced her to influential figures in the field of special needs therapy, and even arranged internships at reputable institutions. Each opportunity brought her closer to realizing her dream of becoming a certified therapist who could advocate for children like Lucas. With Richard's backing, Emily flourished. She immersed herself in her studies, soaking up knowledge and honing her skills with relentless dedication. On weekends, she practiced techniques with Lucas, using him as both a muse and a partner in learning. Together, they explored new methods of communication and interaction, turning their sessions into collaborative experiments that yielded remarkable results. Lucas continued to thrive under Emily's care. His confidence grew as he mastered tasks that once seemed impossible, from feeding himself with adaptive utensils to navigating short distances in his wheelchair without assistance. Every achievement was celebrated, not just by Emily and Richard, but by everyone who witnessed his progress. Friends, neighbors, and specialists alike marveled at the transformation, crediting Emily's unwavering commitment and innovative approach. One spring afternoon, as cherry blossoms bloomed outside, Emily organized a small gathering at the house to mark Lucas's latest milestone, completing a 6-month art therapy program. Guests included therapists, teachers, and local community members who had supported Lucas throughout his journey. The côte backyard was decorated with streamers and balloons, while tables overflowed with snacks and refreshments. As guests mingled, Lucas sat proudly at a display table showcasing his artwork. Paintings, drawings, and collages lined the surface, each piece telling a story of resilience and creativity. Emily stood nearby, beaming with pride as visitors complimented Lucas's talent. "This is amazing," one guest remarked, examining a vibrant painting of a sunset. "He has such a unique perspective." "He does," Emily agreed, glancing fondly at Lucas. "And he's taught me so much about seeing the world differently." Richard watched the scene unfold from a distance, his chest swelling with emotion. He couldn't remember the last time he had felt so fulfilled. Success in business had brought him wealth and recognition, but nothing compared to the sense of purpose he derived from being part of this makeshift family. As he joined Emily and Lucas at the display table, he leaned down to whisper in her ear. "You've done incredible work," he said sincerely. "Not just with Lucas, but with all of us, thank you." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes, though she quickly blinked them away. "We did it together," she replied. "None of this would have been possible without you believing in me." Their shared glance spoke volumes, conveying a bond that transcended words. In that moment, they weren't employer and employee or even friends. They were partners in a mission to create a better, more compassionate world. As the party wound down, Emily took a moment to step outside and breathe in the cool evening air. Standing beneath the stars, she reflected on how drastically her life had changed since meeting Richard and Lucas. What had started as a simple act of kindness in a diner had evolved into a journey of growth, connection, and discovery. She had faced challenges along the way, but each obstacle had strengthened her resolve and deepened her appreciation for the people around her. Richard joined her on the porch, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "Cold?" he asked gently. Little," she admitted, smiling. "But it's worth it. Nights like this remind me why I keep going." They stood side by side in companionable silence, gazing at the twinkling sky. Neither needed to say anything. Their shared understanding bridged any gap between them. For Richard, Emily represented hope, a reminder that humanity's greatest strength lies in its capacity for compassion. And for Emily, Richard symbolized redemption, a testament to the fact that even those burdened by guilt and regret could find peace through love and forgiveness. As spring turned to summer, Emily completed her certification program, earning accolades from instructors and peers alike. Her graduation ceremony was a modest affair held in a university auditorium, but it carried immense significance for everyone involved. Lily, now nearing adulthood, attended proudly alongside Richard and Lucas, cheering louder than anyone when Emily's name was called. After receiving her diploma, Emily delivered a heartfelt speech thanking those who had supported her journey. "There are so many people I owe my success to," she said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. "But most of all, I want to thank two extraordinary individuals, Lucas Bennett, whose courage inspires me every day, and Richard Bennett, whose faith in me gave me wings to fly." The audience erupted in applause as Richard rose to his feet, clapping enthusiastically. Beside him, Lucas waved excitedly, his grin wide and infectious. For Emily, the moment was surreal, a culmination of years of hard work and sacrifice. Yet, she knew this wasn't the end. It was merely the beginning of a new chapter filled with possibilities. In the weeks that followed, Emily launched her own private practice, specializing in art therapy for children with disabilities. Richard offered her an office space within one of his properties free of charge, allowing her to establish roots without financial strain. Word of her expertise spread quickly, and soon she was working with families across the region, helping countless children unlock their potential. Through it all, Emily remained grounded, never forgetting the values that guided her: humility, empathy, and perseverance. She often visited the Bennett household. Years had passed since Emily first walked into the Bennett household as a caregiver, and yet her presence still felt like the heartbeat of the family. The once empty mansion now buzzed with life, filled with laughter, music, and the sounds of Lucas exploring his world in ways that once seemed impossible. Emily's influence had transformed not only Lucas but also Richard, who had grown from a distant, work-focused businessman into a devoted father and advocate for children with special needs. One crisp fall morning, Emily stood in the backyard of the Bennett home, watching Lucas interact with a group of children during an art therapy session she had organized. The kids laughed as they painted pictures on large canvases, their brushes leaving streaks of color across the fabric. Lucas sat in his wheelchair, carefully guiding a brush attached to his hand, his face glowing with pride as he added bold strokes of blue and green to the collaborative masterpiece. Richard approached quietly, holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Emily and leaned against the railing beside her, gazing at the scene with a soft smile. "You've done wonders with this program," he said, his voice tinged with admiration. "Look at them, all so focused, so happy." Emily took a sip of her coffee, her eyes never leaving Lucas. "It's not just me," she replied modestly. "The kids inspire each other, and Lucas, he's become such a leader in his own way." Richard nodded, his gaze fixed on his son. "I never thought I'd see him like this, so confident, so engaged. You've given him a voice, Emily, a way to express himself when words fail him." Her cheeks flushed slightly at the compliment, though she shrugged it off. "He's always had a voice, Richard. I just helped him find new ways to use it." Their conversation paused as they watched Lucas laugh with another boy, their shared excitement evident despite their differences. It was moments like these that reminded Emily why she had chosen this path: to create spaces where every child, regardless of ability, could feel seen and valued. As the years went by, Emily's practice continued to grow, becoming a beacon of hope for families navigating similar challenges. Her reputation spread beyond the local community, drawing clients from neighboring towns and even other states. Yet no matter how successful she became, she never lost sight of her roots or the people who had supported her along the way. She made it a point to visit the Bennett household regularly, ensuring that Lucas remained at the center of her work. Richard, too, had undergone a profound transformation. Inspired by Emily's dedication, he shifted much of his focus away from his business empire and toward philanthropy. Together, they founded a non-profit organization dedicated to providing resources and support for children with disabilities and their families. The foundation offered scholarships, funded research initiatives, and hosted workshops aimed at educating caregivers and educators about innovative therapies and approaches. One evening, after a long day of meetings and planning sessions, Emily joined Richard in his study. Papers and documents were scattered across his desk, evidence of the countless hours they had poured into their shared mission. Richard looked up as she entered, rubbing his temples wearily. "You look exhausted," Emily said, taking a seat across from him. "Maybe it's time to take a break." "I wish I could," Richard admitted with a sigh. "But there's always more to do, more lives to touch, more barriers to break down." "You're doing incredible work," Emily reassured him. But you can't pour from an empty cup. Remember what you told me when I first started? Balance is key. Her words struck a chord, reminding him of the lessons he had learned through her example. You're right, he said, leaning back in his chair. I guess I needed to hear that. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of their responsibilities momentarily lifting. Over the years, their relationship had deepened into something neither had anticipated, a partnership built on trust, mutual respect, and a shared vision for a better future. Though they often joked about being an unlikely duo, a billionaire entrepreneur and a former diner waitress, their differences only strengthened their bond. A few weeks later, Emily received an invitation to speak at a national conference for therapists and advocates working with children who have disabilities. It was a prestigious event, attended by experts and influencers from around the country. When she showed the invitation to Richard, his eyes lit up with excitement. This is huge, Emily, he said, clapping her on the shoulder. You deserve this. Everyone needs to hear your story. Emily hesitated, feeling a mix of pride and nerves. Public speaking wasn't her strong suit, and the thought of addressing such a large audience intimidated her. But Richard encouraged her every step of the way, helping her prepare her speech and rehearse until she felt confident. On the day of the conference, Emily stood backstage, clutching her notes tightly as she listened to the speaker before her wrap up their presentation. Her heart raced, but when she stepped onto the stage and saw Richard and Lucas sitting in the front row, smiling up at her, her anxiety melted away. Good afternoon, she began, her voice steady. My name is Emily Carter, and I'm here today to talk about the power of connection, the kind of connection that changes lives, heals wounds, and builds bridges where none existed before. As she spoke, she recounted her journey, from the diner where she first met Lucas to the thriving practice she now ran. She shared stories of the children she had worked with, highlighting their resilience and creativity. And she credited Richard and Lucas for teaching her the importance of compassion, patience, and perseverance. When she finished, the audience erupted into applause, rising to their feet in a standing ovation. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she scanned the room, overwhelmed by the response. Backstage, Richard greeted her with a tight hug, his own eyes glistening. You did it, he whispered. You inspired them all. The conference marked a turning point for Emily, solidifying her status as a leader in her field. Invitations to speak at other events poured in, and her nonprofit organization gained even more traction. Yet despite her growing fame, she remained humble, always attributing her success to the people who had believed in her when she doubted herself. As the years rolled on, Lucas continued to thrive under Emily's care. He graduated from high school with honors, participating in a special program designed for students with disabilities. His achievements were celebrated not just by his family, but by the entire community, many of whom had followed his journey over the years. At the graduation ceremony, held in a packed auditorium, Emily delivered a heartfelt speech praising Lucas's determination and spirit. Lucas has taught us all what it means to overcome obstacles with grace and courage, she said, her voice thick with emotion. He reminds us that true strength lies not in perfection, but in the willingness to keep trying no matter how hard things get. When Lucas wheeled himself across the stage to receive his diploma, the crowd erupted in cheers. Richard stood beside Emily, tears streaming down his face as he watched his son bask in the spotlight. For both of them, it was a moment of triumph, not just for Lucas, but for everything they had accomplished together as a family. Later that evening, as they gathered at the Bennett mansion to celebrate, Richard raised a glass in a toast. To Emily, he said, his voice steady but filled with gratitude, for showing us what it means to lead with love. To Lucas, for inspiring us all. And to our family, for proving that even the most unlikely connections can change the world. Room echoed with applause as Emily blushed, shaking her head modestly. To us, she countered, raising her own glass, for believing in each other when it mattered most. That night, as fireworks lit up the sky above the mansion, Emily reflected on how far they had come. What had started as a simple act of Kindness in a diner had blossomed into a lifelong friendship and partnership, a testament to the transformative power of compassion and trust. Together, they had built something extraordinary, a family bound not by blood but by love, resilience, and an unshakable belief in the goodness of humanity. And as she looked around at the faces of those she cherished most, Richard, Lucas, Lily, and the countless others whose lives they had touched, she knew that their journey was far from over. There would always be challenges ahead, but with each other by their side, they could face anything. After all, they had already proven that even the smallest gestures of kindness could spark extraordinary change.